Booker the drive, gets inside, leads in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has the foul, and a ball throws it down. And a foul. Working against Butler, got downhill, couldn't punch it. Bam says, get it out of here. Adebayo, sky high with the block and rejection. That's why he's NBA All-Defensive Team. To Caldwell Pope inside, he's tied up by Green. Throws it back up top, James puts up the three. Oh, it's gone! LeBron James from downtown as the shot clock expires.
Gets it into Durant. Here is Durant moving on Tucker. He turns, he shoots.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Deep from Three, presented by the Athletes Hub. I'm Devin Withers. As always, I'm alongside my good friends Gary Sunnyberger and Isaiah Hansen. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Going into the preseason feeling good.
Basketball's about to be back.
Yes, we're so close.
We're in it.
It is the night before opening night for NBA regular season. We got a great show for you guys. Let's get started. There's been a lot of headlines throughout this whole entire preseason. We've been talking Ben Simmons a little bit last episode. This episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Brooklyn Nets point guard Kyrie Irving. We don't know necessarily whether he's going to play. It seems like the latest report is that now that the Nets aren't even going to offer him an extension at the end of the season. So let me get your guys' take. Let's start off with Gary. Buy or sell that Kyrie Irving's even going to play one game for the Nets this season?
I am definitely buying that Kyrie is going to play for the Nets at least once this season. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's going to play like 50 games. I'm not sure that he's going to come back within the next month or two. But I did have Kyrie, I watched his live. I watched Kyrie's Instagram live. I'm not going to go into any specifics. I don't want to get political about anything. But Kyrie, I will just say this. Kyrie Irving is not an idiot. There's a lot of people on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook that are trying to paint Kyrie as this, brain dead person who doesn't know what he's talking about. And I realize that this is coming off of a lot of times people are talking about his flat earth thing and how that was, caused controversy. But I will say this, he did go back later on in a couple of interviews that of course no one listened to, that in saying that was a mistake. Kyrie knows this, that his best skill on this earth is to be a basketball player, and he loves basketball. I don't know how much of the party type you guys are specifically, but when I see my friends go out, when I see my friends go out and have fun, do stuff outside, go to parties and stuff, I get a total fear of missing out. And I wouldn't be surprised if Kyrie Irving sees the fun that Kevin Durant and James Harden have on the court this season and decide, maybe this is overblown. He's changed his mind in the past. I wouldn't completely write off Kyrie Irving getting the vaccine, doing what he needs to do to get back onto the court, go through the proper channels to do all that, to get there because of the love that he has for the game. I'm not ever going to say that Kyrie Irving is completely 100% not playing, because he's just one of those types of people that presented new information, given whatever he can see, he might change his mind just on a one-day whim. We see it with Ben Simmons here. His agency and his leadership group there was trying to get him to come and hold out. They wanted him to not play a single game. And what does Ben Simmons do? He shows up at training camp unannounced, doing what he can to be a part of his team. I'm not saying that Kyrie Irving is going to play 50 games for the Nets, but I wouldn't be surprised to see towards the playoffs maybe, when the Nets need that last 10 games and they need a guy, they might be still towards the 1 seed just because of the talent they have. But don't be surprised if you see Kyrie Irving still playing for the Nets this season, maybe later on towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this in the last episode, and I had mentioned that, Kyrie, it's interesting because I remember the most recent report as well was that maybe Kyrie, or not report, but speculation at least, that Kyrie might retire, and I mean, it if there's anybody in the NBA, in my opinion, that is likely to retire over something like this, it would be Kyrie Irving. He's not only one of the most polarizing players in basketball, he might be one of the most polarizing players just across all sports in general. Let me get your take. Do you think Kyrie Irving's going to end up playing for the Nets this season?
I think he will. I do buy that he will. However, I don't buy that he will get the vaccine at this point. I do feel like with how he's too deep into this, whatever you want to call it. I don't even think he's called it a movement, but there are people looking at it as that. And to be honest, look, no matter what he does at this point, he's going to be villainized for it. If he decides to not get the vaccine, he's going to be villainized for that. If he decides to get it, they're going to villainize him for going back on his word. So there's really not much he could do there, but I do feel like he is firm on his belief. But like you mentioned when you saw the Instagram live, I didn't see the whole thing, but I did see glimmers of it. And you see that Kyrie was almost not downplaying it, but he was talking in the way of like, look, guys, it's really not that big of a deal. Like almost as if like he expects to play himself, you know. And I just believe somewhere down the line, the NBA is going to get involved and they're going to have him in there because he's not the only guy that's not vaccinated. You also got Ben Simmons, who, you know, who knows what's happening with him anyway. But there are other players around the league as well. So I do feel like there will be a loophole figured out. There will be something adjusted over the next couple of months. I mean, this is evolving as Kyrie is with the headlines. Next week will be a completely different story, just as last week was. So I do believe he's going to play, but not for the same reason. I don't think he's going to cave in. I don't think he's going to get the vaccine. That's not with my opinion, whether he should or shouldn't. That's not up to me to decide. But just with how he is and his mentality, I don't think he's the type to cower in at this point. So
here's what's interesting for me, because it's really like shell shock. I don't know if it's because it hasn't really soaked in with me. I don't know about for you guys, but like the regular season starts tomorrow. You know what I mean? The Brooklyn Nets are scheduled to play the Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow night. This isn't like an NFL report where like the two sides can't come like to an agreement and they'll come back to it in like a few months. Someone's holding out from training camp, but we still got a few weeks to decide until a certain deadline. This is tomorrow where the standings are now going to be affected if Kyrie Irving is not out on the court. So I'll bounce it right back to you. Kyrie Irving, it doesn't sound like he's going to be there tomorrow night in uniform on that floor. So if Kyrie Irving is out for a while, how well are the Nets going to be able to adjust without Kyrie?
Well, I feel like we'll kind of be underwhelmed the same way we were last year in a sense. I feel like it'll go as far as James Harden will take them because we already know what Kevin Durant's going to do. Once you have Kevin Durant, you're going to get at least to the second round of the playoffs. So you're going to make the playoffs. You're going to be a top seed. They're not going to be the first seed. I'll tell you that. I'm not even sure they're going to be the first seed with Kyrie just because there's so many pieces to mesh. But I do expect them to finish near the top of the East. And it depends on James Harden. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be able to bring in the same kind of production he did with the Rockets and mesh it in with Kevin Durant? I do believe he can. But we really didn't get a chance to fully see that at its full strength like we could have last year. But reality, we haven't had the three together anyway. I think with Kyrie, I don't even know if it makes a ton of a difference if James Harden doesn't mesh in the way he is. I feel like he's the main wild card more so than Kyrie. Kyrie's the guy to close it for you. But I don't know if he's the guy that's your main building piece to get you any further than, say, the second or the third round. Once you're in the fight and once you're in that battle, and if Kyrie shows up, that is their wild card. That is their weapon to close the deal. But to get there, I think we're going to see more or less the same.
Yeah, and Gary, are you pretty much in the same boat? You know, seems a little skeptical of the Nets finishing as that top seed with or without Kyrie, but are you sort of in the same boat that the Nets are still going to be up there, you know, with the top teams in the East? But what is the role of Kyrie going to be?
I definitely see the Nets having a super good shot at getting the 1 or the 2 seed. I don't really see them falling further than that. I mean, of course, barring injury, you never know. You have guys like James Harden and Kevin Durant who, although they are two of the greatest, I'd say reasonably top 10 players in the NBA. I think Harden is more of the question there of whether or not you believe in him. But KD and Harden have one issue on their team is that when they go down, it is totally reliant on the offense that Steve Nash has created there and what they can do without the two of them handling the ball. Do they have enough ball handlers that say that a Harden goes down or a KD goes down? Do they have ball handlers to really make up for that lack of playmaking that the other positions don't have. I know that Blake Griffin at one point was a pretty good playmaker back when he played for the Clippers, but I don't see him nearing his age with the injuries that he's had and the decline he's had, being able to hold the most of the possessions for that team. They can still win a very good amount of games with only one of those guys. But I have a stat here that I really, really liked, which was with all three of those players on the team, all playing on the court at the one time, they were the best offense in the league by far. They were in the 97th percentile when it came to execution on offensive possessions with the two of them on the court. With three of them on the court, with one of them off, that team offensively falls back down to around a above average, but not solid team. It's around a 60% percentile in the league with one of them off the court. What that means to me is that with one of them off the court, their offense can't make up for the lack of their defense. Their defense isn't great. They have some decent players, but Kevin Durant is a great defender, but him being the focal point of your defense isn't going to win you many games. More so, your offense is going to be the one that does that. So I see them still being good with maybe Kyrie being out for as long as he will. But if I think if one of the other stars goes down, if Durant has another leg injury, if Harden has to deal with some issues during the season, I know he had last year, I could see it slipping away from him. But with the star power that they have, I wouldn't be surprised if a injured Brooklyn Nets team still finishes top 5, top 4 in the East.
Yeah, so here's what's interesting for me, right? Because I was actually looking through while we were prepping for today. I wanted to find some things about the Nets with and without Kyrie Irving. And when you look up Kyrie Irving and the Nets, one of the top headlines is an article from Sports Illustrated. And this is literally word for word. I'm not exaggerating. The headline says, Brooklyn Nets face unknown with Kyrie Irving absent. I'm confused because the Nets, like Barry said, they were an above average team even without Kyrie Irving, without one of the pieces out there. They were 12-6 last season without Kyrie Irving. Without Kyrie Irving on the floor, like we're going to see tomorrow night, we're going to see a mix of Joe Harris and Patty Mills in that backcourt with James Harden, which is still going to be a very efficient backcourt in my opinion. Joe Harris is coming off of a career high in minutes per game from last season, field goal percentage from last season, deep threes from last season, and his steal totals were up. So for me, this whole entire Kyrie Irving narrative, I've been saying since last week that the Brooklyn Nets, they're going to be a top 3 team in the East with or without. Like Iz said, this is going to be a very competitive team. They might not be the top seed, and that's fine. You don't need to be the top seed to get all the way to the finals, especially with this play-in tournament style. But I believe that Kyrie Irving, as good as he is, he's not going to be the one that breaks the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets' best player is Kevin Durant. As long as Kevin Durant is on that floor, we saw what happened in the Olympics. We saw what happened in the postseason. That team rides on Kevin Durant. So I'm excited to see what the Brooklyn Nets are going to do. We're going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets a little bit later when we talk about our opening night predictions. But let me ask you guys this to sort of wrap up on Kyrie. If there is a team that's going to trade for Kyrie, because we've also seen this speculation of, oh, let's just trade Ben Simmons straight up for Kyrie Irving. That's not happening. As much as people want to get that clickbait going, it's not going to happen. But Gary, give me one interesting team that you think is at least in contention to land Kyrie in a trade talk.
I would like to clarify what I'm about to say here with, I don't think that Kyrie is going to be traded. That being said, I would absolutely love for a trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, everyone, before you click away from this video right now, I want to mention this right now. Him and Cleveland did not have a great relationship when they left. He threatened to go into surgery for a leg injury. So this take is about to be pretty wild. But the Colin Sexton, Kevin Love contracts match up to get Kyrie Irving. Kyrie has a relationship in Cleveland. He played there for most of his career before the last 3 seasons. I believe he went to the Celtics in 2018. So the last 3-4 seasons. I really do think that this is a guy that if you are looking for the Cleveland Cavaliers to jump up from that, we're the middling lower of the East category in the rankings to at least a perennial playoff team, sell some more tickets over in Cleveland. Everybody can get their Kyrie Irving jerseys back out of their closet. You solve your issue with the Colin Sexton, Darius Garland backcourt. You give Darius Garland a better point guard to play with. You get a guy who players in the league respect in Kyrie Irving, and a guy who can, if you believe in the leadership of Kyrie Irving in that way. I say this as a fan and as media members, I know that people kind of disregard his level of impact on teammates. And you just look at the way the Boston Celtics treat him when they play against him. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown aren't shrugging him off. They aren't, throwing him to the side. They're shaking his hand. They're giving him dap. They're talking to him after the post games. This is a guy who in the league is raved about by other players just on his ability to talk to guys, his ability to communicate with players and coaches. Whether you like his opinions or not in his personal life, you can't deny that a Kyrie Irving-led Cleveland Cavaliers team would be so interesting and way better than any on the court in the last 3 seasons. And I would like it. I would really like to see the way they mesh there with Evan Mobley, a defense center who looks to, with the preseason, looks to make a very, very big impact Cavs defensively this season. I can definitely see this happening in a super cool world, but maybe not in a realistic one, because whether or not you want to believe that the Nets are going to move on from Kyrie, I think if they're going to trade him in the middle of this season, they're going to try to trade him for players that make an impact now. Will Colin Sexton do that for the Cavs or for the Nets? Maybe. He's going to hold the ball a lot more than they probably want him to. But as the competitor, I could definitely see him meshing well with that team. But like I said earlier, I don't really see it happening, but I do think it would be super cool and super fascinating.
I think you just want the Cavs to trade for a superstar. Remember last week you were talking about Ben Simmons potentially to Cleveland. This week it's Kyrie back to Cleveland. Oh man, like next week we're going to be talking about LeBron James, and you're going to want LeBron back in Cleveland before we know it. You never know.
I'm a Heat fan. I can never say anything because he was just like, peace out, bye, I'm going back to Cleveland. For some reason, people like going back to Cleveland. I don't really understand it. I've never been to Cleveland. If you were to ask Joakim Noah, nobody wants to go to Cleveland. But then again, people seem to, when they go to that city, like it. Hell, I would definitely be up for visiting Cleveland. If you want to send me on a flight there, I'd be totally happy to cover some teams there. But no, my general opinion is just that if you get Kyrie Irving on any team, just like Ben Simmons that Isaiah had last week, if you put Kyrie Irving on a team in the Eastern Conference, don't rule them out for a 6, 7, 8 spot in that conference for the finals and the standings.
Okay. How about you? What team do you think is potentially in play for Kyrie? I agree with Gary that Kyrie might not even be on the move. I think it's just going to be a little bit too difficult. But just for speculation purposes, there's got to be teams calling at least about Kyrie Irving, or teams that are at least piquing their ears a little bit.
So the one team, look, no matter whatever team takes Kyrie is going to take a gamble, right? So what team would benefit most from the gamble playing out, and what team doesn't have a ton to lose at this point? Like, they're just trying to make something work. And that is going to be the Timberwolves, the Minnesota Timberwolves. We were talking about them last week as it pertained to Ben Simmons. What would that have been for them? Also a gamble in a sense of, like, is he going to take it to the next level? He's still going to get you to the playoffs, but is he going to really take you that much further? And I think the Timberwolves have enough depth to where they could kind of just, give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, you're probably going to lose Karl Anthony Towns no matter what. And as currently constructed, you probably will too. So unless things change, who could be the game changer? It could be Kyrie, for better or for worse. I could see a package dealt around, D'Angelo Russell and some depth pieces, and I could see the Nets wanting to take that deal. Again, if I had to guess, I don't think he's going anywhere, Kyrie. But if he were to, a team like the Timberwolves might be really aggressive, even with knowing how Kyrie is, and maybe he doesn't even play for them. But the upside, imagine having Kyrie next to Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, and a motivated Kyrie at that, especially, he might be like, you know what, I'm tired of this. Everybody wants to get rid of me. I'm in the place you least expected. I think the Timberwolves will try their best, and I think with Karl Anthony Towns, it could be a huge gamble, but it could really work out for them. So it's blackjack, but I think they could hit 21 if they get that for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know what do you think. Just as a follow up, like what does a trade package even, or either one of you, like what does a trade package even for Kyrie look like? Because if Ben Simmons apparently is like 3 first-round picks and a whole lot of swaps, I don't even want to know what Kyrie Irving is nowadays.
Well, when it comes to I don't know if you're coming back to me with that, but I was going to say,
go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say with the Timberwolves, I mean, when it comes to the Nets, they're trying to win now, right? So the Sixers, not saying that they aren't either, but they're probably going to be looking more for the picks. But I think the Nets would be happy with depth, like D'Angelo Russell and some other side pieces. It's not proper compensation for Kyrie, but compared to, what you could get for him, which is nothing if he decides not to play, I think it's an upside, especially in terms of a championship. Sorry.
No, you was going right back to you. I cut you off. I just wanted to add the issue you have with the Kyrie Irving trade is he's not guaranteed to play for your team this season. You never know, depending on what team you trade for, whatever regulations you have in place there. He might not be able to play for your team, depending on what state you live in. But at the same time, you have to think about his contract as well. I have it up here, his contract for the next couple of years. He pretty much is a unrestricted free agent here coming up soon. So you have to put into consideration that he might not play past the 2023-2024 season for your team. So if you're going to trade a bunch of future assets for Kyrie Irving, you have to know that he could leave. He could definitely move and go to a different team. Maybe he joins LeBron and the Lakers again. I bet you Devin would scream with joy about that. The rest of the league would cry. But my point being is that you have to take in consideration his contract with these trades. With Ben Simmons, he's got 4 years left on his deal. He's a guy who, if you're trading for him, you have a guaranteed 3 to 4 seasons that you have him on your roster. With Kyrie, you're looking more towards that Kawhi Leonard type of deal where the Spurs were able to get off of him and more like the Raptors were able to acquire him for a lot less than you probably would have expected because he only had one guaranteed year there and the possibility of him staying in Toronto was kind of low. So when you're making a Kyrie Irving trade, when you're going on NBA.com and putting stuff in the trade machine, you have to take into consideration that a team like the Cavs or a team like the Timberwolves, or I saw another team that might have been trading for him was the Pacers, which kind of looks off the table now that Malcolm Brogdon signed his contract extension, which basically says that you can't trade him for the rest of the season. If you're going to trade for Kyrie Irving, you're going to have to give up some draft capital, and I don't see a lot of teams doing that just on the basis of will we turn out like, funnily enough, the Brooklyn Nets of the last couple seasons where we trade our 4 really good players, giving up draft assets. It doesn't work out. Now for 3-4 seasons, we're screwed.
Yeah, and so you guys both mentioned really solid contenders. I think the Cavs and the Timberwolves definitely have the player capital to make a trade happen, right? We've talked about this not only today, but we talked about this last week. But there's a team that I believe could contend for an NBA title this season with the addition of Kyrie Irving. And it's out west. It's with an owner who is very, very firm that all of his players need to have the vaccine, not just players, but his whole entire staff. So coaching staff, trainers, everybody. And it's Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks. And let me tell you why. If Kyrie Irving goes to Dallas, is there a better 1-2 in the league than Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic? I don't know. It's up there. If it's others, it's like, LeBron and Anthony Davis. Yeah, like Anthony Davis is a solid one, and then LeBron sort of towards that tail end of his career. But this 1-2 combo of Kyrie and Luka Doncic would be absolutely lethal in the Western Conference. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind when you're talking about this sort of trade. So what does a trade package actually look like? Everything that I've read and everything that I've seen from people that believe that the Mavericks could be in play, you start off with Kristaps Porzingis. I know Gary loves Kristaps Porzingis and what we actually talked a little bit about this off the air. We were talking about his preseason play and all of that. But Porzingis is owed $64 million across the next couple of seasons, and he has a player option in 2023 and 2024. So I'm throwing him in there. You have him, he's stable, and he's a big man. Then you're going to need a big man when you're in Brooklyn, right? Because a lot of their biggest big guy right now is going to end up that can actually score the ball is going to end up being Kevin Durant. But I don't trust Blake Griffin long term, and I don't trust any of their other centers that they have listed on their depth chart. So I would throw in Kristaps Porzingis, great piece to build around right there. I'm also throwing in Trey Burke. Burke only a $3 million cap hit going into this season, and then has a player option in the following season. So I'm throwing him in there for a little bit of depth. You don't know what you're going to get in your backcourt, but Trey Burke, along with Joe Harris and along with the Patty Mills, is a great piece if you're going to try to replace Kyrie. Obviously, replacing Kyrie is an impossible task, but what you have to do is you have to fill the void with enough role players, which the Brooklyn Nets have plenty of. And I'm also throwing in a second-round pick. And so here's why I don't believe that Kyrie Irving is going to cost as much as Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, he's a headache and a half. But, man, Kyrie, if Ben Simmons is a headache and a half, Kyrie Irving might be 10.5 headaches. You got to multiply that thing by 10.
You got a
migraine. Yeah,
I
migraine.
really don't think that Kyrie Irving is going to cost as much as a Ben Simmons. I actually think he's going to end up going for a little bit less than Ben Simmons because the Brooklyn Nets might get so desperate to say, this is a guy who legitimately might retire or sit out the whole entire season if we don't move on from him. Whereas Ben Simmons, like Gary talked about before, back at practice, there's photos of that practice with the rest of the team. It seems like we're reaching the end of that, dramatic saga where Ben Simmons actually might play on opening night when the Sixers do play. But I think that this is a really good opportunity for the Dallas Mavericks, who've been talking about for years now wanting to get back to the NBA Finals. And if you're going to do it, you need to make a splash. And this is really the only splash available in the NBA trade market. And I do believe that, if the Dallas Mavericks were to trade for Kyrie, Kyrie obviously would need to get the vaccine. That's a whole different conversation. But if he does so, and like we were talking about before, where Iz was saying, we think that Kyrie eventually will be influenced to get the vaccine. If that's the case, the Dallas Mavericks, they should be paying a lot more attention to this. But I agree with Gary's point where it's probably a whole lot of nothing, and I don't know if Kyrie Irving's actually going to get traded because of his superstar value. But if the Brooklyn Nets become desperate enough, I do think this is a team that needs to be watched out for.
I definitely could see the Mavs asking for a Nick Claxton in that trade to kind of levy up that big man rotation. If they lose Kristaps, they don't have a guy
true.
other than Boban that is that tall and that big. I know you have Dwight Powell there, and I know you have the German center whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Gomez?
No, oh my gosh, I can't
Kleber?
remember. Kleber, Maxi Kleber. Yeah, Maxi Kleber. I know you have those two guys, but they're not incredibly tall. I know the NBA is going a lot smaller now, but they do have Cauley-Stein. Whether you believe in him or not is up for debate. I don't either. So that's why more I was going for the Nick Claxton deal. If you're going to take a guy like Kyrie Irving with the expectation that he might not play for you past next season, the young guy in Nick Claxton to give you a little bit more of a big man rotation would be something that the Mavs will probably be asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's definitely a fair point. You got to get, more height back in that sort of deal, because if the Mavericks are serious about contending, that might be their only way of doing so is having a complete roster. Kyrie, obviously a great addition. I know Iz was giving me a few glances. Iz, what's wrong? You don't like Kyrie?
No, it's not the deal. I mean, it's not the idea of the Mavericks. But you said Porzingis, you said Burke. I thought you were gonna say Hardaway next. I'm like, wait. So what we sent them when we sent them, they're gonna this now? Like that was just one extra blow from that trade. So I was feeling like a burn a little bit. But other than that, I pretty much agree with you. That's another team, like I said earlier, it's whoever's going to take that gamble. And for the Mavs, if they were to pull off that deal, that's a big time gamble and it pay off big time. So I like it.
But let's jump over to the NBA preseason. I want to start off with just a really general question. We'll start with Gary. Gary, how much do you actually invest in the NBA preseason? Because I see all of this panic buttons getting hit about the LA Lakers. Oh, man, like they're not going to work out in the regular season because the preseason isn't working out for them. And you get other teams that are just exceeding expectations. And then we ride this bandwagon of, hey, I think this team's going to contend. I'm at fault for it. I told you guys last week, I think the Chicago Bulls are the real deal this year. But Gary, how much do you invest into the NBA preseason?
I'm going to just put my fingers up here in like a giant goose egg, just a big 0. I would honestly put 0 stock into the preseason. And for this stat alone, I was going through on my computer the other day looking up previous NBA championship winners and how they fared in the season that they won the NBA Finals. Last season, the Bucks went 0-3 in the preseason. It was a shortened one because of the bubble last season, and they had a shortened off season. They didn't have as many preseason games. Bucks went 0-3. The year before that, the Lakers went 3-3. The year before that, the Raptors 4-1, Warriors 2-2, 6-1, and then the 2016 Cavs, they went 1-6. I'm going down the list here. It's pretty much they either win a couple of games or they go 500, or some teams don't even win more than one. And last season, the Bucks went 0-3. My point more being is that when you have these older teams that know that they're going to compete for a championship, not only are they not going to play their best players for a long extended period of time during the preseason, they're going to try to give the younger guys some more playing time. And then on the flip side of that, you have these younger teams who they're really only trying to find the developmental guys to make the end of their roster. You have teams like the Bulls who are really trying to see what works when they have all their new free agents acquired. So they're going to have a lot more on-court chemistry during the preseason just because they're going to play them more often. I can't say that for the Hornets because I don't know what the heck happened against the Mavs the other day. But my point more being towards is that you have the guys like the Lakers who don't win a single game in the preseason, and people are ready to hit the panic button. Oh my God, Russell Westbrook. Oh my God, LeBron James. Is this going to be the year that they don't? Is this going to be the year that they suck? I'm just going to say right now that if you don't put any stock into the preseason, unless you really like a guy and you want to use it as a, as a way to bolster your argument, because I guarantee you the next topic we're going to do here, I'm going to do the exact same thing I just mentioned. But my point more being so is that if you are an older team who's looking to compete for the title, if you're a team that hasn't had many offseason acquisitions and are kind of running it back a la the Utah Jazz or the Milwaukee Bucks, you're going to have some hiccups in the preseason, but that's mainly because you're either trying stuff out, you're not showing people what your real lineup is, or you're just resting all of your older guys so that during the season they have a lot more playing time and can play with more energy so they're not completely worn out before the season even starts.
Yeah, and I'll ask you a similar question, but it's also different at the same time. I noticed, because I'm a huge football fan as well, and it seems like when football preseason comes around, like nobody invests any stock whatsoever into that. Like a team could go 0-4 and you're like, okay, cool, that was preseason. Like my starters weren't even playing. And then all of a sudden the NBA preseason, it's literally the same exact thing, a few more games, but still like it doesn't matter. Starters aren't playing for long periods of time. Like Gary just mentioned, why is it that people in the NBA media are giving so much investment into the NBA preseason when it's really not like that in any other sport that we can think of?
I think it's more because there's not much else going on right now when it comes to outside of the headlines. When it comes to the on-court play, they just want to kind of see how things are going to work out. That's why I don't give it a complete 0 in terms of like meaningfulness, because I do want to see like how can certain pieces mesh. Like, did the young guys, do they have new bags up their sleeve? RJ Barrett, do they have new things, like, or are they just more or less the same? Are they bumping into each other, or is there some level of chemistry? So I don't invest completely nothing into it. But yeah, I think in terms, it's just people are just so excited to get the regular season going. So, you want to just jump on any possible story. Oh, and when it comes to the Lakers are very similar to the Yankees in the sense where people just want you to fail. So they're going to, like anything. Oh, see, look, it's not going to work. And then when it does work, there's going to be something for that too. So it's just a matter of not a lot going on, maybe a mixture of excitement, and And I mean, I do fall like if my team's winning, I'm with them. But if I'm losing, it doesn't mean anything. So
Trust me, I know more than anybody. You know me, I'm the most degenerate Yankees, Cowboys, Lakers fan you're ever gonna meet.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Are you seriously a Lakers,
serious.
Yankees, Cowboys fan?
I am a Yankees.
I started a
Lakers
podcast with a Lakers, Yankees, Cowboys fan.
Yup, and you're 2 in. We're episode 2 in. Then
I will say I do question his. As a Yankee fan, I do question his validation as a Yankee fan sometimes. But yes, unfortunately.
Do you like Bama too? Are you a Bama fan as well?
No
okay,
Bama.
You didn't complete the quadrifecta of cancerous teams to root for.
Yeah, I know. Trust me.
Oh my goodness.
So Gary, let me go over to you because you had mentioned the idea of these overreactions, underreactions that we have in the NBA preseason. So after everything, we're about 24 hours away from NBA regular season action. This is it. What's one overreaction and one underreaction you have at the end of the preseason play?
So, for my overreaction, and I am that I've just made about 10 minutes ago when I say don't, but there are certain things that you can look for in certain players to give yourself a little bit of optimism on their performance for the rest of the season. And the person I want to highlight is Jordan Poole. He's a wing player for the Warriors. If you watched any of the Warriors games last year, you'll know him as the guy who, oh my gosh, look at the stats. Look at the box score. He had 30 points last game. How did that happen? What? I thought Steph Curry was supposed to be the guy scoring for this team. And then you look down and it's Jordan Poole averaging 12 points a game last season, which isn't great, but you look towards the end of the regular season and he started to put it on a little bit more. This preseason, he's averaging 23 a game. He's shooting 40% from three. He's averaging 3.5 rebounds and assists. He's got almost a steal and a half a game, and his turnovers are going down. His turnover rate has dropped significantly since he started playing in the NBA. He was on the G League team that the Warriors had, the Santa Cruz Warriors, and then got called up, has done consistently well, and he's 22 years old. I'm not saying that I'm going to pick him for this award, but there's definitely some consideration when it comes to most improved player for Jordan Poole. If he's able to make the jump as the second scorer on this Warriors team with Klay Thompson out, I wouldn't disregard him possibly winning that award. He's plus 5,000 right now in Vegas to win, which if you're a betting person is definitely a good one to look at and maybe put some money towards. Could we see another star emerging in Golden State? I really don't think that he's going to become like a superstar level player. I doubt it. He's going to ever be that guy who the Warriors can look at the end of the preseason or end of the postseason for some of those crazy games that he had at the end of the regular season, especially with teams game planning for him a little bit more. But I definitely see a decent starter on a pretty good offense in the Golden State Warriors with him on the court, and even a number 1, number 2 offense when Steph and Klay get back. If for my underreaction, I know this just came out like maybe an hour ago. So now that we're recording, DeAndre Ayton did not sign or did not come to a deal with the Phoenix Suns on a contract extension. I personally like DeAndre Ayton, but I'm definitely not as high on him as a lot of other people are. He's a really good rim protector, and the stats back that up. He's in the highest percentile when it comes to opponent field goal percentage at the rim. But other than that, what really does he bring you on offense? He can shoot the mid-range shot a little bit. He's not really one to go from 3 and stretch the floor that way. And then if you do want to rely completely on his rim protection, go look at the finals games last year. I'm not saying that he's a bad player whatsoever, but he actually got torched by Giannis. The Bucks are able to figure out how to get into the paint and how to get their best player in the paint and past Ayton. And I mean, Giannis had 50 points in the last game of the season. I don't underestimate Ayton having another good year proving himself, but I will say that I think the Suns ownership signing Mikal Bridges and leaving Ayton kind of in his own way to see if he can play into a better contract, or maybe he goes into restricted free agency, gets a max deal, and the Suns don't sign him. And if I had to say one team that he could actually, I think would pay him and be pretty good with him would be the Pistons. They got Cade Cunningham. They're trying to rebuild that roster of young guys. And if you add a pretty decent center in DeAndre Ayton, who could possibly become even better, we forget that he was the number 1 pick. You can have a team that contends in the East for the playoffs. But that's a couple years down the road. Don't look for that anytime soon. But yeah, I don't really see the hubbub about the Suns not signing DeAndre Ayton as if it's going to completely destroy their title chances.
Yeah, and it's interesting. As you were saying that, I was literally on Twitter just making sure we weren't missing anything. Obviously, we want to stay up to date here at the Athletes Hub. Literally 8 minutes ago, the latest report now is that DeAndre Ayton is, quote-unquote, very unhappy with Phoenix right now. So it could be a headline going into this regular season. Not good, especially when you're talking about how I remember it was one of Shaq's teammates. I forget off the top of my head. I would have to look. It was Nick Anderson, actually, now that I remember, was comparing DeAndre Ayton to Shaquille O'Neal in terms of like build and everything. Obviously a huge stretch, but like Gary said, he's one of the best rim protectors in the league, in my opinion. But this is a headline, and the Suns, who are coming off of an NBA Finals appearance, brought back a majority of their roster, do look very good in preseason play at times, but it could be a huge hindrance to their roster if DeAndre Ayton decides to sit out, or if he decides, not to give his 100%. I'm sure that won't be the case when he's on the floor. Obviously, one of the best younger players that we see in the league. But let's talk to you. What do you have as an overreaction and an underreaction going into the NBA regular season?
So my underreaction, it's a pretty cheap one, but it's Russell Westbrook. You got everybody, they're freaking out, and it goes back to what Gary said earlier when it comes to the preseason. Like at the end of the day, the numbers, they're very little, and it's almost I go back to Allen Iverson practice. We're talking about practice. I think that's essentially what Russell Westbrook is doing. He's just going out there. He's not putting much thought into it. Is he a clumsy player? Sure. Is he going to make some of those errors that you see in the preseason? Sure. But I do expect somebody like LeBron to control the situation a little bit, have the ball a little more. So I think Westbrook is a big time underreaction for me because I see everybody else overreacting as it pertains to him. Talking about trade him and all this good stuff. We just got started. I hope that he can harness that energy somehow, and I think you got to give it a chance before you call the trade him. So that is my underreaction. My overreaction is someone I just mentioned very briefly earlier, and that is RJ Barrett. Okay, RJ Barrett. I understand. I'm not gonna put him next to not putting him. Maybe I'm not even putting him in the All-Star yet. However, I was wanting to see is he gonna stay the same, or are we going to see a player develop? Is he going to eventually become a star? Is there improvement? Because there's a lot of players that we expect, we say they have great potential, but that's just a really nice way of saying you haven't done anything yet. Okay. But RJ Barrett, he seems a lot more motivated this season when he came in, like I said, he's using his right hand now, which is something he's never really done. And a lot of them, and at the end of the drive, it comes with a missed shot, but nevertheless, he's out there doing his thing. He only had one bad shooting performance. It was the 13th where he went 3 for 11. Other than that, he shot 50% from 3. He's had 2 games of at least like 16 points a game. His plus minus is looking good. So when he's on the floor, and it's not like he's just on the side and everybody's doing the work. Like he's imposing himself a lot more. And when you watch him play, he just seems more confident, because that's one thing I've noticed from him last year, and I would say quite often. He would get on a little roll and he'll make a couple shots and he looks like, okay, I see a glimmer of something here. And then he'll commit a turnover and then he becomes passive for the rest of the game. He doesn't want to mess up. He doesn't want to make another mistake. But he also has that dog in him though. So he has that, he wants to be great. Even the other day they talked, I think he put on a little more weight in terms of muscle. And he said, look, I'm going to be defending the other team's best player every night. I don't know who told him that, but I feel like he's telling himself that, and probably Tibbs too. So yeah, that is my overreaction. I think he's going to take a big step, and I do feel like he is a future All-Star, whether that's this year or next year. And dare I say superstar. I'm not going to go there yet, but we'll give it some time. But yeah, he's looking really good. So
I swear you'll look for any reason to talk about your Knicks. I mean,
Had to
RJ
somehow.
Barrett, don't you dare put that man as a superstar. Not yet at least. We can
RJ Barrett could shoot. RJ Barrett could shoot like a piece of paper into a trash can from across the room, and it would be like, "Yo, look at his 3-point
Look
percentage
at
going up."
I mean, he's on the same trajectory as Lonzo Ball, right? The same growth.
We'll
Hey,
see, we'll
I
see.
haven't given my ridiculous superstar take yet either. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for the random NBA player I decide is going to become the next LeBron James.
Yep. I mean, you talked about Tyler Hero before, so maybe that's what we're going to be looking at.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right. You got me on that one.
I was kind of hesitant earlier when you're talking about the best duos. I'm like, what about Julius Randle and RJ Barrett? Let's bring that up.
Unfortunately not.
Pause.
Yeah, flag on the play. So I'll tell you guys what my overreaction is. We were talking about this during the prep day, and I finally got around to figuring out where this actual source came from because I saw it on Fox Sports at first, but the actual source is from 538. And they use these analytics instead of Vegas odds, instead of their actual own opinions. They use just straight analytics to predict what the standings are going to look like. I don't know how accurate they are, but the overreaction is where they have the Lakers coming out of this season. Right now, they have them finishing as the 9th seed in the Western Conference, number 9 with a 42-40 record last season that would have been the 8th seed in the conference. So they think they're just going to tick above the 500 mark. And they also give them only a 50% chance to make the playoffs in the first place. And they only have them at a 4% chance to reach the NBA Finals, despite what Vegas tells you, which says that they're the favorites in the West at betting odds of plus 170. So it's interesting that, regardless of them having Russell Westbrook, obviously he's had his preseason woes. LeBron James, literally as we're talking right now, Frank Vogel's saying that LeBron is committed to playing about 34 minutes per game. Last season, he was right around that 33, 34 mark. So business as usual. We talk about Anthony Davis is going to be the primary ball handler, in the post. We don't really know how this offense is actually going to look. But number 9 seed, I mean, we all agreed on this when we were talking about the prep day. That seems very ridiculous and like a huge stretch. We all are pretty much in agreement that the Lakers at least will be a top 5 seed, regardless of how their roster actually comes together, how long it takes them to put the pieces together. I do think that they're an elite team in the West. They are ones that I believe Gary was the one that had the Lakers actually reaching the NBA Finals based on the prediction article. And so that's my overreaction. And then my underreaction is one that is touched a little bit about last week, which was the Washington Wizards potentially being a team that could gel together. We talked a little bit about Bradley Beal, but my underreaction is the preseason woes of the Washington Wizards. They haven't won a game in preseason. Normally, I wouldn't hit the panic button, but for a team that lost out on Russell Westbrook, he requested a trade. We weren't really sure how this team was going to look with KCP on the roster, with Kyle Kuzma on the roster, with Montrezl Harrell on the roster. All these new guys, they're replacing 3 out of their 5 starters from opening night of last season. The only ones are Rui and Bradley Beal are the only 2. And then you're also getting a team that has Spencer Dinwiddie. That's one player that we're all pretty impressed by. We do agree that he's a star to a degree, but he's less than 10 months removed from a torn ACL. So I'm very concerned that instead of the Wizards fighting for a playoff spot like we were talking about last week, as I look further and further into this, it's looking like the early Wizards of last season where it's going to be hard for them to win these games because I just get this feeling that Bradley Beal is going to be the primary ball handler. He's going to score over 30 points a game, I think, this season, or just about 30 points a game because the amount of shots that he's going to take is going to be up there in the top tier of the league, if not the number 1 spot, if anything. So I'm a little worried about the Wizards in the Eastern Conference. I get that we're not really putting a lot of stock into the preseason, but like is said, it's this ability to find out who meshes with who well. You're trying out different things, and I haven't seen a single thing work out for the Washington Wizards. And we have a couple of days to go until their first regular season game. I do get concerned on whether or not they're actually going to be a team that even sniffs close to that play-in tournament.
Is there a sense in Washington? Do you feel there's a sense in Washington of a possible? I know Bradley Beal's been on the trade block for what feels like his entire career. Yeah, his whole career pretty much. I know I'm in Gainesville right now. I know he played at Florida. He's a big UF guy here, so I get a lot of talk about him here for one reason or another. But do you feel like there is a sense of a basketball purgatory that the Washington Wizards almost exist in now, with him being almost too good for your team to medal out and get a top draft pick, but not being good enough to making that leap to being a decent playoff contender this late in his career?
Yeah, it's interesting for me at least, because I think Bradley Beal, I love Bradley Beal. I'm actually doing a fantasy basketball draft tonight with Ray Ashworth, who's another writer on the site. And we all get one keeper, and I'm actually keeping Bradley Beal. I chose to keep Bradley Beal over Anthony Davis and Paul George going into this. So I felt like Bradley Beal, he's going to put up good numbers. He's on a contract year actually, and then he gets his player option after this offseason. And so it's weird. Like, he's one of those players, obviously we talked about this last week. He had the opportunity to, request a trade. Russell Westbrook was basically begging him, hey, you got to get out of there. Like, this is not a team that can contend. And he was like, I'm just going to stay, with my, how much does he make next year? This year he has a 33.72 cap hit. I think he's doing just fine. I think he's okay putting up the numbers, going for a big contract in the offseason and free agency. But this is a team that, I know we talk about Dinwiddie, but I don't feel that Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be he's not going to have a huge demand, especially, coming off of that torn ACL. I feel like they're going to slowly implement him into their offense. And then outside of Dinwiddie, who's your number two? Kyle Kuzma, I've said this before, he's absolutely garbage. He is dog water. He is so bad. Everything that I've seen from Kyle Kuzma on the Lakers, he showed promise. I remember when the conversation, and as a Lakers fan, I never took this stance, but I remember when the media was going crazy about, is Kyle Kuzma better than Jason Tatum, coming out of the draft, because it was very early hype for Kyle Kuzma. He was playing very well. But Kyle Kuzma is absolutely dog water, and I wish him nothing but the worst for the Washington Wizards, unfortunately.
Clip that. I need that clip put on our YouTube channel. I want all the Kyle Kuzma lovers to come out and hate on Devin for that take.
There are none.
Though I agree. There are none. That's the good point.
Look,
they're all gone.
I'm not gonna say I love Kyle Kuzma, but I'm not gonna come after him as much as you are. Okay, he's the one guy the Lakers did not want to trade when they got rid of Lonzo Ball and all those guys to get Anthony Davis. He showed glimpses of potential, and I saw him. He didn't come in with any crazy hair this year, so I feel okay, he means business. He just has he has my haircut, so I think
he looked like Slim Shady last year. He really did. He had the bleached hair. There's that picture of LeBron looking at him all funny. That's just a good picture.
So maybe he can harness. He can harness it down. Washington's not it's not Hollywood, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll absolutely trust me. We'll see what happens. But as we start to wrap up the show, I do want to get your guys' thoughts about opening night. We have two really, really good matchups. We have the Nets taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. We also have the Golden State Warriors taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. So, Gary, let's start with you. What are you looking forward to about NBA opening night, and what's your ultimate predictions about what's going to happen tomorrow?
Of course, I'm just excited for basketball to start again, for basketball that matters to start again. I feel like this last couple of months felt longer than the last offseason, just because we had such a short one last year that, I was looking at my calendar and I was like, all right, the NBA finals just happened. There's another game in 2 months. What the heck? So I'm looking forward to that. As much in terms of players that I'm looking out for, I think the one that I want to focus on more is James Harden. We have to see what he can bring off of his injury. He's looked really good in the videos he's posted on Instagram, which of course everyone does. No one's going to post videos of them missing. So that's always weird that people look at those as if they're going to be the tell-all for what the season's going to be. But I do think that he does look promising. He looks fast. He looks quick. But it really depends on how he gets to play against the Bucks. You've got three great perimeter defenders in Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, and Giannis when he gets switched onto him. If Harden is looking to take the point guard duties like he did last season, I expect Drew to be on him all night. Drew was voted as the best perimeter defender in the NBA last season by general managers. So I'm going to see what James Harden can do against him. But as for predictions go, I have the Bucks winning. Tomorrow. I don't think the Nets are really built to play the Bucks as much as people thought. Last season, I know that people clowned on DeAndre Ayton, but if you just have one of those guys that you can throw at Giannis for 20 minutes a game, that really matters. And when those guys that you replaced with him are Paul Millsap and LaMarcus Aldridge, I really don't see them really coming at the Bucks too much, especially from the side of having Giannis Antetokounmpo. And then for the Lakers-Warriors game, I have the Warriors winning. It is true that the Warriors are 1-2 against the Lakers since LeBron and Steph have played in the games. Of course, the record looks a lot worse when you go back another season when Steph wasn't playing. But in both of those games that they lost, Steph played less than 30 minutes. If Steph can stay on the floor, and if the Lakers don't get the support that they had in the previous matchups with Harrell and KCP going off against them in their last 2 wins, I could definitely see the Warriors coming out with a win tomorrow night.
And Gary, I was just gonna say too, with the whole entire Giannis conversation, I'm not sure if you saw Isaiah, but Giannis is actually looking really good from just like perimeter shooting. And I remember the caption on Twitter was something along the lines of like, "Oh God, like Giannis is about to break the league. Like, good luck to everybody else." Like, this was a guy, like, he's still being given a lot of space. I think teams are gonna eventually tighten up on him. But yeah, I think you're totally right. I think you got to throw someone at Giannis. In the last 2 preseason games, I'm looking at it right now, 9 for 11 from the field in the most recent game. And that was against Dallas on October 15th, and October 13th against Utah. In Utah, he was 9 for 12 from the field. So this is a guy, he just does not miss more often than not. I mean, of course, a lot of those are going to be in the paint as well, but he looked really good shooting from outside.
There's a video, of the last game that he played where first possession, he takes the ball, he runs right at the court, he stands right at the top of the 3-point line, shoots a 3, makes it. 0-0 game, and now it's 3-0. If the first shot of the game that you have as a Bucks fan is watching Giannis shoot a 3 and making it, look out. I mean, absolutely look out. If this dude can add a jump shot, I mean, like, of course everybody says that, but what superstar have we seen with a great defensive potential, amazing player, who then all of a sudden adds a jump shot? It would be Kawhi Leonard. Yeah. If you are looking at Giannis as a guy who can be potentially that next top 10 NBA player of all time that people are expecting him to become, maybe top 15, depending on how you feel about it, him adding that jump shot is so important for his game, and really look out. I mean, you could see shades of 2000 Shaquille O'Neal when it comes to just absolute dominance in the regular season.
Yeah, careful though. You might get like Isaiah telling you like to throw Julius Randle or something on Giannis, like as a you might get some crazy.
If that happens, it's over. You know.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
But Isaiah, talk to me about your NBA opening night predictions. What's a player that you're looking out for as well?
Well, because the MLB season has ended a couple weeks ago, right? There's no baseball going on right now. So I'm definitely looking forward to the NBA season to start. And I just want to say something about Giannis real quick, adding his jump shot, maybe a hot take. I don't know. I think if he adds a jump, like a real 3-point shot where he's like a true threat from there, I think we might be talking about a player that's going to have the highest peak of any player in NBA history in terms of skill. More than Jordan. I'm not going to say he's the greatest of all time. He doesn't have the accolades. But as terms of skill and peak, like what can you do to stop him? He's going to get you defensively. If he can knock down an outside, like a 3-point shot, he could shoot down a mid-range. He's starting to make his free throws. He's dominant on the inside. What is the flaw in his game if he adds that? He's even not a bad passer. He has the ability, if he needs to kick it out to somebody. So let me ask, like, what is there to stop him? I mean, Michael Jordan, as great as he was, and I think he has the highest peak as it stands, you know, he wasn't really asked to do much of the 3-point shots. I'm not coming after him for that. However, if Giannis does it and he does everything else too, you got to really consider that. Anyway, so we'll clip that. We'll fight about that another day.
I'm going to get the YouTube comments mad.
Yeah.
Jordan's the GOAT. He's the greatest ever. He'll never get beaten.
He is, but he could get it. But he is, but he could. Anyway, so yeah, definitely I'm gonna go with the Bucks. I mean, I am the Giannis guy here. I've been talking about him since last week. So, and it's for that reason. And you know, the Nets are very similar to the Lakers. There's just so many things going on right now. I do think they're gonna be fine in the end, but for like game one, Giannis coming off a championship win. He's ready, man. He's ready to go in there. He's ready to block Kevin Durant somewhere down the line. So that's going to happen as well. I think we're going to see that. And then we're also going to see the Warriors. They're going to knock off the Lakers. There's more. The Lakers have bigger things to worry about right now. They're thinking about the long picture, but I think the Warriors are going to come out firing. They got Klay Thompson coming back. You mentioned Poole. They got the rookies, and you got Steph Curry, who I believe he just knocked down, 40 points the other night. So Curry's going to do some great things. And you're going to see, so it's going to be the Warriors, and it's going to be the Bucks.
Oh, man, that was – I feel like Isaiah just gave me like 500 hot takes in like the span of 60 seconds. Says that Giannis with a true three-point threat could be the highest peak in NBA history, disregarding Michael Jordan 6-0, 6 Finals MVP. Disregarding
Look, you're gonna disrespect George.
Do not misconstrue. Okay, do not misconstrue what I mean. I mean in terms of skill and dominance, or just being able to do everything. Can you name a player that could do more? I'm not talking about the greatness.
Will Chamberlain is rolling over in his grave.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay.
Will Chamberlain is like,
was he knocking down 3-pointers? Was he? I mean, it's not his fault. They didn't have a
3-point line back then. There was no 3-pointers.
It's not his fault, but I'm saying because there is one, and Giannis is knocking down those 3-pointers. It's not like, I mean, I guess if it was around back then, Wilt could have been the one, and if Michael Jordan was asked to shoot from the 3, he would be the one to have the highest peak, but he didn't, and Giannis might. So we'll see.
And then
what do you think about the games?
And then Iz goes on to say, "Oh well, if he can hit down threes naturally, what's gonna stop someone like Giannis? I'll tell you what's gonna stop him is that free throw line is gonna end up stopping him 72%.
Okay. I also mentioned if he can remain consistent from the free throw line. I mean, what is it like? We talk about LeBron James being one of the most talented all around players,
and a higher peak, by the way, and a higher peak. I would say. But anyways, going back to these NBA opening nights, I do agree with you guys. I do think this is the Bucks game to win. They're at home, and I believe that the very first thing we're going to get as soon as this game ends, there's going to be like dozens of media sites going into a frenzy over the Nets need Kyrie Irving. The Nets need Kyrie Irving to come back on the floor. They can't compete without Kyrie Irving, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. I do think you guys are both right. The Nets will find their way, much like the Lakers are going to find their way on opening night when they take down the Golden State Warriors. I think that this has been a huge overreaction from all these clickbait sites that say, oh, Russell Westbrook, he's just not going to gel with the team. The Lakers are going to fall short. I mentioned to you guys about these projections of the Lakers only finishing a touch above 500. I think that whole entire narrative is getting put to rest tomorrow night when the Lakers beat out the Warriors. But yeah, the player that I'm most excited to see, it's Russell Westbrook. He's the one that has to put up or shut up. This is his debut in purple and gold in the Staples Center. It's now or it's never. This is going to be an exciting game for Russell Westbrook. I'm saying it right now. Triple-double, not even close. He's going to put up very, very good numbers in a very, very I won't even say close, but I do think I'll give the Lakers about a 6-point spread, I would say.
You just outlined the problem right there. This is Westbrook's game. He's going to have a triple-double. He's going to go out there. That's what's going through his mind too, and that's the problem, my friend.
Yeah, but you know what I like about Westbrook is there was an interview about him, and he said someone asked him about the triple-doubles with the Lakers, and he talked about this, and he was like, I go for triple-doubles, but he says – I go for like incredibly difficult triple. Like he wants 20 of everything. Like this man is going to be able to do it. I'm telling you, this is going to be an offense, and it's going to be so much fun to watch. It's literally like going into NBA 2K and just doing like all these crazy trades to build like just a fun team to play with. If it's not Westbrook, then it's LeBron. If it's not LeBron, then it's AD. If it's not AD, hey, let's just give the ball to Carmelo Anthony. Like there's going to be so many guys just to give the ball to, and you never know who's going to hit on a certain night. That's how the Lakers played last season. There were games where Wesley Matthews was hitting like 5 3-pointers, and that's how the Lakers ended up winning. KCP, who was on the Lakers at one point, shipped off to the Washington Wizards. There were nights where he was the guy. Like this is the Lakers team that I think is going to be very exciting to watch. I think it's going to be on full display, whereas the Nets, it's going to take them a little bit longer just because of the distractions surrounding Kyrie Irving. So that's what I have, but it's going to be a fun one for sure.
You mentioned Carmelo, so I laid back. I laid off.
Okay, good.
Okay, I laid off.
That's is his safety blanket. You can talk about the Lakers all you want. If you mention Carmelo Anthony, he'll be like, all right, that's okay. That's a good take. That's a good take.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, you were saying you were worried about all the clickbait sites talking about it. I would hesitate on making fun of the clickbait because I think we've got the clickbait master in Isaiah right here.
Yeah,
Giannis, better than Jordan.
I know.
Title the video.
Yeah. Clip it and tell us that Giannis is going to have the highest peak in NBA history if he knocks down his threes.
I'm going to do it. Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, listen, guys, this has been a fun show. I'm glad we got to do this again. If you enjoyed this, definitely tune in. We're here every single Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to give our deep takes surrounding the NBA. For more content, be sure to check us out at theathleteshub.org. We got plenty of site coming in every single day relating to the NBA, as well as every other sport. So I had a good time with you guys. We're 24 hours away now from our first NBA regular season action. I can't wait to come back next week, recap some of the top moments with you guys. But yeah, take it easy, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Follow us on YouTube, Road to 1,000 subs.
And check out the False 9.
Yes.
The drive, gets inside, leads in.